Q1. What do you understand by political thought? How it is distinguished from political theory and political philosophy? Answer. The terms like political thought, political theory, and political philosophy forms the core of political science. Although all these terms are used interchangeably, yet there is a considerable difference between these terms. Political thought. The term political is derived from the Greek word polis, which means state. In Greek sense, political is equal to public. Thought is understood with reference to space and time. Thus, political thought deals with all the concepts or ideas related to government of particular age, e.g., ancient Indian thought, medieval Indian thought, or modern Western thought. Political theory. The term theory stands for systematic knowledge. Political theory describes, explains, and evaluates political events and institutions. The word political theory thus represents the systematic study of political phenomena. In broad sense, political theory can be viewed from two perspectives. 1. Political theory based on empirical method. 2. Political theory based on philosophical method. Empirical method essentially deals with the political institutions and political behavior. Its method is observation, experimentation, and quantification. Major focus is on study of facts. Empirical political theory is concerned with what is rather than what ought to be. This type of political theory is descriptive in nature rather than prescriptive. Thus, it tries to be value-free or value-neutral. Philosophical method is normative in nature. Philosophical theory is closely related to philosophy or metaethics. Political philosophy is mainly concerned with the normative concepts and ideas like justice, democracy, rights, authority, etc. It is concerned with what ought to be rather than what is. Through this it aims to achieve ultimate good or purpose of life. E.g., Plato's Republic, Justice Rawls' theory of justice, Isaiah Berlin's theory of liberty. Q2. Plato's communism is a heroic remedy for a desperate evil, the union of political power and economic temptation in the same hands, he explained. Answer. According to Plato, the reason behind the fall of Athens was corruption. In order to keep the rulers free from corruption, Plato has prescribed a typical style of living which is known as communism of property and communism of family for the guardian class. Under this system, the rulers will keep minimum goods for their daily use. They will live together and will not keep any private property. So, in this sense, the rulers will follow the principle of communism of property. Rulers are not allowed to have any private families. All rulers will be isolated from the ordinary population and enter into group marriage. All newly born children will be taken in state custody. In Plato's view, family is a bigger problem than property. It is for family that people want to earn money. Family leads to not only corruption but also nepotism, favoritism. Plato has an additional purpose with communism of family, i.e. genetic. Only ablest men will be permitted to marry ablest women so that the best race emerges. There is also an indirect consequence of Plato's communism of family, i.e. liberation of women. Women were unable to participate in the affairs of city-state because they have been completely involved in family. Once free, they can devote themselves to the service of state. Aristotle has criticized Plato's idea of communism. He views family and property from functionalist perspective. Aristotle held that Plato's system of communism of property is not desirable. If there are some problems with private property, then there are some advantages as well. Private property gives a sense of achievement, motivation to work hard, scope for charity. Those who have property are men of reasons would like peace and stability in society. Similarity, family is also time-tested. Institution, family gives emotional stability. Abolishing family will be taking us backward and not forward when men used to live in barbaric age. We can conclude that Plato's diagnosis about evils created by property and family are correct, but his prescription are wrong. Rather, we think of such legislations and institutions that bring transparency and accountability in public life. Q3. Indeed, it is generally true that it is difficult for men to live together and to be partners in any form of human activity, but it is especially difficult to do so when property is involved, he explained. Answer. Aristotle's statement is criticism of Plato's theory of communism of property and defense of private ownership of property by applying functionalist approach. Aristotle held that ownership of property gives a sense of security and an urge to increase one's wealth. It is an instrument of hospitality, generosity, friendship, and affection. Aristotle has analyzed three systems of property. 1. Common ownership and common use, communism. Aristotle has not supported this system because according to Aristotle, everyone's property is no one's responsibility. According to him, it is difficult business for the people to stay together, but it is more difficult when the question of property is involved. 2. Common ownership and individual use. It is neither logical nor practicable, and if comes in practice will lead to much exploitation. 3. Individual ownership and common use. Aristotle supports this system on the principle of golden mean, because it is more productive. Property acts as a source of motivation to work hard. Men of property means men of reason, so good for stability and source of charity. He believes that man is by nature a political social animal and society contributes in well-being of man in multiple ways, so man should also contribute to society. In order to minimize the evils associated with property, he suggests that rich persons should keep moderate wealth which is enough to lead a good life. Since man is by nature a political animal and society plays role in development of man, man is expected to pay back to the society. We can find similarity in Aristotle's theory of property with Gandhi's concept of trusteeship. Gandhi did not favor abolition of private property. Gandhi held that capitalist class should not consider itself as the owner of capital but the trustee of the capital. In Indian context, the concept of CSR, i.e. corporate social responsibility, comes near to the idea Q for the divorce between the principles of religion and those of politics in the writings of Machiavelli is more apparent than real. Comment. Answer. Every thinker is the child of his time. Lasky. This statement is most appropriate in case of Machiavelli. Machiavelli is truly called as the child of Renaissance. During the time of Machiavelli, Italy was divided against Italy. Italy was divided into 5 principalities and it lacked political unity. It was prone to external threats. Machiavelli desired unification and the glorification of Italy. Machiavelli felt that it is the church has kept Italy divided. The church had become a corrupt institution and church controlled all walks of life like birth, marriage, death, etc. Thus, Machiavelli divorced religion from politics and separated them completely from each other. He even tried to subordinate religion to the state. Machiavelli recommended the rule of strong monarch with an iron hand. In Prince, the most celebrated work of Machiavelli, one can see a theoretical break from the philosophy of medieval age which is centered around religion. Machiavelli is called as father of realpolitik because he uncovered the power view of politics in his book, Prince. Religion, morality and politics became the 3 bedrock principles of Machiavelli's political thought. Machiavelli advises the prince not to act according to the tunes of the Pope. Machiavelli even suggests that prince can go against religion and morality when needed. Machiavelli's famous maxim is "end justifies the means," which means prince can adopt any means to achieve the end. However, there is a dispute over Machiavelli's attitude towards conventional moral and religious standards of human conduct. Due to Machiavelli's suggestion to leader to avoid the common values of justice, mercy, wisdom and love, Leo Strauss calls him teacher of evil. The moderate school of thought associated with Benedetto Croce views Machiavelli simply as a realist or pragmatist, advocating suspension of ethics only in case of politics. The mildest view on Machiavelli is of Skinner. For him, Machiavelli simply making difference between facts of political life and values of moral judgment. The prince ought to remain good if he can, but he must be prepared to commit evil if he must. Thus, the degree of separation between religion and politics in Machiavelli remains a matter of debate. Q.5 Plato's philosophy is the most savage and most profound attack on liberal ideas which history can show. Crossman discuss. Answer. Context of the statement is criticism of Plato for imparting anti-democratic values in his ideal state. Plato hated democracy. The reasons behind Plato's hatred for democracy is linked with the incident of Socrates' life, when he was ordered to drink hemlock by the Democrats, as well as Plato's admiration for military discipline prevailing in Sparta. At that time, Athens was in the state of decline. Plato held that the reason behind the fall of Athens was the ignorance of the ruling class. And after doing all the analysis, he came to the conclusion that the rule of demagogies must be replaced by rule of knowledge because knowledge is virtue. He held that once philosopher king is installed, he must be given absolute power because no law or ordinance is mightier than knowledge. The scholars find the roots of totalitarianism in the works of Plato. One of the most extensive criticism of Plato comes from Karl Popper. The volume 1 of his book Open Society and Its Enemies, subtitled The Spell of Plato, projects Plato, a totalitarian thinker. Popper held that Plato was a champion of closed society. Closed society is one in which no right to freedom of speech and expression or social mobility is allowed. Plato is not even ready to accept new ideas of citizen. Winspear called Plato's Republic as a blueprint of authoritarianism. Toynbee called Plato as fascist. C.M. Joad also compared Platonism with fascism. But Popper's understanding was thus questioned by admirers of Plato like Levinson. Levinson in his book In Defense of Plato admitted that fascism and Plato differ in time and space, and we are comparing the uncomparable. Srajic Bhargava also held that Popper's analysis of Plato was misleading and Popper is ideologically biased. To conclude, we can say that Plato's ideas remained utopic. His opposition to democracy was a part of his project to establish rule of knowledge. He was deeply concerned with the welfare of people, which is the ultimate end of democracy. In the present situation, Plato's idea of establishing the rule of knowledge is certainly admirable. But his stand to give absolute powers to the rulers implied stagnation and denial of freedom to citizens. Q.6 The more perfect the admixture of the political elements, the more lasting will be the constitution. Explain. Answer. If Plato is known for perfection, Aristotle is known for best practicable. The ultimate aim of a constitution is well-organization of political elements. If it will not be achieved properly, it will lead to dissatisfaction among people, which leads to revolution and put political stability under threat. In order to overcome all the above problem, he has studied 158 constitution and came up with the idea that his polity is the best practicable form of government, which is based on the principle of golden mean. Golden mean implies that virtue of character lies in finding the middle path between two extremes, which will otherwise turn out to be vices. Buddhism also commends middle path as the road to virtue. Aristotle has given 6 basic forms of constitution. He has classified constitution onto parameters, i.e. objective of government and number of persons ruling. In his classification, monarchy is the best but not best practicable. Monarchy will turn into tyranny, i.e. the worst from Aggiovidi. In contrast, polity is the rule of middle class in the interest of the people, and it is the best practicable form of Giovidi. It represents the golden mean of oligarchy and democracy. Oligarchy is rule of rich, but it will not be stable. Democracy is also not stable because it is rule of ignorance. Poor suffers from ignorance and rich from arrogance, hence neither of the two is in the habit of obedience to law. Middle classes have reason as well as moderate wealth. Polity avoids two extremes of richness and poverty, the extreme of ignorance and arrogance, and provides stability and order in society. To conclude, we can see the inherent message given by Aristotle that the society where huge inequality exists are not stable and more prone to internal conspiracy and external threats, and the society where more number of persons are in middle class are stable. Q7 Machiavelli is perhaps the most universally reprobated figure in the history of political literature, the man whose precepts are universally disavowed in principle but regularly followed in practice. Maxi comment. Answer. It is said that perhaps no other political thinker is as criticized as Machiavelli in the annals of political philosophy. Machiavellianism is extensively used as a negative term to characterize unprincipled politicians of the sort as Machiavelli described in Prince. Machiavellian became a byword for treachery, sneakiness, ambition, and ruthlessness. Machiavelli is known for his political realism. Machiavelli is the first person to uncover the power view of politics. According to Machiavelli, politics is management of power. In the writings of Machiavelli, there is no scope for idealism or utopianism. Machiavelli focused on what it is rather than what ought to be in his writings. Perhaps no other thinker expressed his/her views as explicitly and openly as of Machiavelli. It is very unfortunate that Machiavelli was heavily criticized for telling the reality of politics. Machiavelli is mainly criticized for his separation of ethics from politics. Machiavelli established politics as a profession having its own political standards. Hence, politics and ethics has to be judged separately. Machiavelli is also criticized for his dictum ends justify the means. Gandhi has criticized Machiavelli for separation of politics and ethics. Machiavelli portrayed human nature in a very pessimistic manner, like humans are selfish, fickle-minded, greedy by nature, and prince should use this opportunity to the fullest extent possible. He also said that every human is a power-seeking animal, and power is a means, and power is an end in itself. His views are many times called as narrowly dated and narrowly located Sabine, and his views were only applicable to Italy of his times. However, in real world, it is difficult to see people who play politics with fair hands, yet no one accepts that. Thus, it can be concluded that everyone criticizes Machiavelli, but in practice everyone is more Machiavellian than Machiavelli. Also, we have to know that Machiavelli is not anti-religion. Machiavelli was against the interference of church in the state affairs. At the time when church controlled the state, Machiavelli challenged this view by proposing strict separation between religion and politics in his work The Prince. His prescriptions are not for achieving personal ends of prince but for betterment of state. Thus, Machiavelli deserved to be known as greatest patriot of all times. Q8 The politics of Aristotle is the greatest contribution in the field of political science that we possess. Discuss. Answer. If Plato is known as father of political philosophy, Aristotle is known as father of political science. In the field of ethics and politics, Aristotle held that the understanding of the natural and essential aims of human being would be the guiding principles of moral and political practice. Aristotle has not only given the basics of science of politics but made a significant contribution to its development, which is given in his famous work Politics. His works on deal with some important issues related to politics, justice, law, equality, and classification of constitutions. Aristotle held that political science as master science because it served the end of human life, while other sciences merely provide for suitable means to achieve ends. Aristotle treated the state as a moral as well as a natural institution. He supported organic theory of state and maintained that the relation between individual and state was similar to that between an organ and the organism, i.e. the body. Aristotle has the practical bent of mind. He does not look for perfection. He believes that one has to be worldly wise rather than wise in world of ideas. He believes that idea and matter exist together. Plato's book Republic is encyclopedia in nature, whereas Aristotle's book Politics is focused on the issues of political life. In his theory of constitutions, he has applied an empirical approach. There are many ideas in like constitutionalism, revolutions, which are very important for any student of political science. He has given the theory of constitution and causes for revolution after studying 158 constitutions, recommended the doctrine of golden rule, i.e. polity is the best practicable form of government. We also see the origin of comparative politics in Aristotle. Whitehead held that entire Western philosophy is footnote of Aristotle.